Yes. Coming to you cordless, everybody. It's Tuesday night, October 22nd, 2024. It's 9 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, 6 p.m. on the West Coast, 8 a.m. in Singapore, 12 noon in Sydney, Australia, and 8 p.m. Central Daylight Time, where I'm sitting in Northeast Minneapolis. I am Jim Peters. Welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is episode number 167, if you're keeping score at home. It was 74 degrees here today. It was 82 yesterday. We had the warmest September in history last month, and it looks like we're going to have the warmest October in history, too, for Minneapolis anyway. The average temperature at this time of year is 54 degrees. So, and it's supposed to be, tomorrow I think it's only going to be 52, but that's the temperature's going to go back up. Yeah. I know you care, but the thing is, everybody thinks Minnesota's icebox of the nation, and 4 months of the year, it is. Look. I like living here. It's one of the most liberal states in America. I don't belong here, but I have to say, whatever. So far, so good. The government here is functional, and I'm very happy to report that. And I think that's the reason a lot of people stay here. But that said, who knows? But I've said this before. It's fabulous here 8 months of the year. Terrific. It's fantastic. 4 months of the year, it just sucks. I know that a lot of people are into winter sports. Not me. I'm not into. My wife said yesterday. She said, "Man, I'm looking forward to the snow." Well, I'm not. I'm not at all. So I'm going to spend $1,000 to put new snow tires on our car on Thursday too. So, and for those of you who don't drive in snow regularly, now first of all, okay, icebox in the nation. That's an arguable thing because we're the coldest state in the nation. But that said, Buffalo, New York gets more snow than we do. So it's a toss up on whether we're the bigger city by far. So I just spent some time in Buffalo, though. Pretty nice place. I like it. I got to admit, I like it a lot. But if it's colder here, and cold isn't fun. Isn't fun at all. So what are we doing tonight? We don't have a guest. Now, if you read the description of the show on Rumble and Blog Talk Radio, yeah, this is my pitch to you. You're the guest tonight. Call in 563-999-3435. I will interview you. We'll talk about your life. We'll talk about whatever you want. I got a bunch of stuff here I'm going to go through what I usually do. Some news. We got some political news. We got some UFO news. We got the fact that apparently they found a giant hoard of lithium, believe it or not, in Arkansas. And this is going to be a big deal for America. This is the type of thing that goes under the radar and in the legacy news, those propaganda news people. But this is going to be a big deal, and we'll talk about that later. But anyway, you're right. If you want to call in, please do. Please do. 563-999-3435. If you're on Rumble and watching us, it's a ticker on the bottom of the screen. If you're on Blog Talk Radio, it's our Blog Talk Radio telephone number for a channel. 563-999-3435. Tomorrow we're taking the night off. We've had that planned for a long time. I got a family thing going on. Thursday, Jackie Dorothy, she writes for Cowboy State Daily, which is a major news site for the state of Wyoming. I don't know what cities it's in, and I don't even know if they have an office. They might just be all work virtually. I don't even know. No, I was talking about this last night. Wyoming by population is the least populous state in the union. There's only 560,000 people there. And I made this joke last time, and I'll make it again because it's not really that much of an exaggeration. There are more people living in my neighborhood in Northeast Minneapolis than there are in the entire state of Wyoming, and that's almost true. Anyway, she writes a column, not so much a column, it's a series of featured stories for Cowboy State Daily called Haunted Wyoming. And we're going to talk to her about that and also like just what it's like to live there. So it's the least populous state. It has the least population density of any state in the union. Because, okay, Rhode Island is small, but the state of Wyoming is quite large. and it has not much more people in it than um, Rhode Island does. So we're going to talk to her about what life and times are like there, and then I don't have anything for Monday yet. Still working on it. I think David Strom's going to be joining us sometime next week. I'm trying to put together. Last year we did a panel show for Halloween that was absolutely hilarious, and everybody who watched it, we got a huge rating viewership on that because it was really funny. And I'm trying to put the same thing together this year. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. We'll see. Uh, you would think that changing the time, so we move the time for of our broadcast forward, the live show 2 hours to 8 p.m. Central instead of 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. Eastern instead of 11 p.m. Eastern, and you'd think that would help, but for the guys I got working on this show, actually maybe not. So we'll see. We'll figure that out. Okay, so what happened today? Well, I'll tell you what happened today because this is really kind of interesting and crucial. Now, you probably if you've been following the news at all, you might not get this impression from the left-wing media because they don't want to talk about this. Kamala Harris's campaign is collapsing, and that's not a, a biased or um, it's not a biased thing for me to say that. It actually is. It's collapsing because all the polling that's coming in now, right now, shows her losing massively. So, according to the 538 Nate Silver poll, uh, the way when they slice and dice all the numbers, Donald Trump has a 93% chance of winning the electoral college. The Atlas poll, which is, believe it or not, this is pretty amazing. The Atlas poll is done by a company in Switzerland, but they have been over the last few years the single most accurate poll in the United States, and that might be partly because they don't have any skin in any political game at all. They're simply number crunchers. That's what they are. But they have come to the conclusion. I find this astonishing. They're the only poll that's reporting this. But like I said, it's important because specifically because of what because they have no because they're so accurate. They've been the single most accurate poll for at least the last 5 years, and they say that more women in America are going to vote for Trump than Kamala Harris, and no one believes that, and I don't know if I believe it either. But like I said, their accuracy is actually it's a thing to hang their hat on. I think they said it was 52.48% for uh, Trump Harris for women, so that's amazing. Mark Halperin, who used to work for MSNBC, and I think he got fired if I'm right or something. Now works on his own and is actually probably much better on his own too. He has also been considered basically a voice of unbiased reason. He says that she's screwed. He's been slicing and dicing these numbers too. Right now, the Real Clear Politics average has Trump winning every single battleground state, all seven of them. And I find this amazing because I live here, but maybe even he might even win Minnesota, which I gotta admit I've never thought that would happen in a million years, but that's what Halpern's saying. So I mean, people are saying this is close, and now people are saying, and the thing is, my gut has been telling me this for some time. Last night I watch a bunch of talk show hosts, when I like to study what other people are doing. Also my entertainment. I watch Jimmy Fallon, the video cast of Jimmy Fallon's radio show on Fox Radio, which runs from noon to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. I think he's on like 160 stations, and his broadcast, his video simulcast is kind of like what this one is now. I mean, we used to have a set and all that sort of rot. We were doing that, and we dumped that a couple of weeks ago. But so it's the same thing. It's on Fox Nation, and you can watch the playback. You can actually watch it live, just like you can watch this live too. So I had a really interesting thing. He's interviewing. Oh, who was it? Oh, Jessica Tarlov, Tar Tarlov, who's on the Five, the liberal. woman who's on the five. He was interviewing her. She was talking about the fact that even though she was talking about the doom and gloom numbers for Harris too, but she said that she found it kind of temporarily, at least, enlightening because it looks like all of the that a lot of the early voters are, as usual, Democratic voters. And apparently now the numbers are coming in. That's the other thing. That's not true at all. Now it looks like the vast majority of the people going to the poll early are Republicans. And also, and this is really important, I've talked about this on the show. And once again, this is one of those things that kind of falls through the cracks of the media. But for the first time ever, they started keeping figures in 1992. But if you followed American politics, you know that this was true well before then. For the first time ever, there are more registered Republicans in the United States than Democrats, and that all happened in like the last 8 months. I mean, it's starting to look like. Oh, anyway, let me finish what I was talking Um, about Jimmy Fallon, who a very entertaining guy, comedian. Very. I think he's fantastic on the radio. I really do. But he was talking about the zeitgeist, which is kind of if you know that what that word means, is kind of like the what's in the air. It's kind of like the underlying vibration of the culture, you know. And he says, and he's absolutely right. I totally agree with him. He says that um, Trump has it right now, and like some people have been saying, and Tyrus on the Cutfeld show on Fox News has been saying this for like weeks, that he thinks that the election will be over by 10:30, and now there are people actually thinking that this could be an actual complete utter blowout. Now we'll see. It, I mean, right now it looks like it would be very difficult for Kamala Harris to win the electoral college. But that said, it's always kind of been assumed that she had a really good chance and maybe even the probability of winning the popular vote. And now I'm starting to think the same thing. I'm starting to think maybe that might not happen either. Trump might run away with this. So, because I don't know, I just have the feeling, and I hate to say this, but I'm in touch with the zeitgeist too. And I don't know if it's because Phelan and I are both lifelong performers. I don't know what the deal is. I've been pretty good at making political predictions. Not perfect. I didn't predict 2022. I thought it was going to be blowout too, and it wasn't. But and I've still to this day, I still think, and I know my friends listen to this and say, "Well, he's a conspiracy theorist." Yeah, the graphic intro we used to run when we were running the video show said "King of Conspiracies," and there's two reasons for that, and that is one is I've been talking about the extraterrestrials for 30 years. I'm talking about the fact that UFOs are here and they're real, and finally the government came out and said, "Yeah, that's true." So I got vindicated. There's still people to this day who won't talk to me anymore because of that. They were so convinced I was completely freaking crazy that they gave up talking to me. But yeah, I was right about that. But the thing is here's the deal. That wasn't a matter of the zeitgeist. That was a matter of evidence. And that's the thing, same thing I get down to the 2020 election. I still think that it was not only what was, if you're going to define rigged versus cheated meaning they actually screwed with the vote count, rigged means they actually screwed with the rules and the laws. It was obviously rigged. There's no doubt about that. We all know that. But I actually think it was cheated. And once again, I have evidence. I don't have any proof, but I have credible evidence. My credible evidence is that if and I've spent my entire life in the entertainment business, just like Fela. I'm one of those guys. I wasn't a comedian, but I spent my entire life doing all sorts of things. And one thing I know is crowd sizes. So during the entire 2020 campaign, I've talked about this before, but I'm talking about it again because still think this is really important. During the entire 2020 campaign, Joe Biden, with one exception, 5 days before the election in Pennsylvania, with one exception, never drew more than 200 people to any campaign event, where Trump was averaging 20,000 people per campaign event. That's now you look the first real presidential election in the United States was the third one because basically George Washington was coronated. Coronated. Yeah, did I get that right? Okay. Adams versus Jefferson was the first reelection, and it was really, really nasty. It was ugly. It was ugly. But at that point, you have about 15 million people in the United States, right? And 13 states in 1800. Those guys were drawing more people than Joe Biden drew. What, 200, 100? Let me do some math here. 220 years later, when the country is 20 times bigger. I mean, it's absolutely nuts that a guy running for president and the guy who won the nomination would draw so few people. And they said it was COVID. They said, well, here's another thing. And this is a verified fact. This got lost in the news cycle completely. 2 weeks before his inauguration, they had only wrote in, only 1,600 people had requested tickets. Now you could get 4 tickets per request, which means they were only expecting 7,000 people to come, whereas previously, going back years and years and years, at least 100,000 people have showed up for every inauguration. At least, and they only had 7,000 tickets they had given out, which is, I think that's the reason they decided to close the plaza to spectators. And they said COVID and security. No, they were embarrassed by how small the crowd was going to be. That's what it was. That's what I think. And I think that, you can go on and on. I've had people tell me, well, you don't understand, Jim. People didn't vote for Joe Biden. They voted against Donald Trump. And I know that's true. I know. But still, I just think that did everybody vote against Donald Trump? I don't. That doesn't. It does. He got 81 million votes. He got more votes than Barack Obama, who's the acknowledged Frank Sinatra of American politics. I mean, the guy is a god. Whether you like him or not, and whether you agree with his politics, he is a freaking political god. And I do not understand how Joe Biden got more votes than he did. I don't. I think there was cheating sometime along the line. That's what I think. So about this thing about the zeitgeist. So I've had this feeling for quite a while that this is actually going to end up going to be a blowout. I really do. It's just my gut reaction. You have a phone call. I'm going to take it. Hi, who's this? Hello. Hey, Joe. How you doing? I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right. I'm sitting here. I'm flying solo. I'm not touching myself, so that's a good thing. yeah, yeah, I know you did. I know, and I'm an old guy too, so it makes it even worse. It's creepy now. Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. Hold on. I gotta. Well, I have to qualify this. So I was just talking about. I was watching Jimmy Fallon's show. I was watching it a few days ago, and he had a woman on. I can't remember her name. She is an RNC spokesperson, and she's only like 26, 27 years old. I mean, well spoken for her age, but she was making fun about the fact. She was talking about the fact that everybody in her generation's in therapy. She said everybody. She said everybody of that age, Gen Z, is in therapy, and it looks like they're going to be in therapy forever. So they were joking about it, and I didn't know that, but that makes sense to me because apparently, if the little slight or trigger, and they have to run off to the therapist. That's what she was saying anyway. So anyway, your thought on that? Yeah, that's hey Joe. Let me. You sound like a man's man to me, which we used to call, or at least my generation used to refer to. Do, doesn't this thing about toxic masculinity bug the crap out of you? No, I want to get you started because it's it's a talk show. It's a talk show, Joe. That's what we do. Get started. Yeah. Do you think that has some? Yeah. Hey, do you think that has something to do with the lack of support Kamala has for men? For men? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I was talking about the zeitgeist earlier, and my feeling is I think a lot of men think similarly. I think that's what I think they do. Are you married, Joe? I, I don't know. Yeah. Uh, I've been married 35 years, and I would say I have a good marriage. It's certainly not perfect, but in terms of your definition of it's worked out. It's been okay. It has, and I have to tell you, this is almost freaky. I have a friend of mine whose wife just passed away a couple of years ago. They were married for 14 years, and and the thing is, I know him and I know both of them. He has what he calls a perfect marriage, and it was. It's the only one I've ever seen. Yes. Yeah. That's interesting. 'Cause I don't know if I could do that. My friend my friend, he was not he and this and I know he's not exaggerating. I know this. He says that in 14 years, his wife and him only had one single argument in 14 years. And it's almost freaky. And the thing is, if you knew them, I mean, it sounds like I'm making this up or he's lying, but if I knew them and I know that was true, he was absolutely right. He had a perfect marriage. They never, it's like there was never any downside. It was like 14 years of a high, and she got s- uh, uh, cervical cancer and passed away. So it's really sad, and it's sad for yeah, it is. I mean, sad for him too, but well, needless to say, I guess but yeah. So oh yeah, right, right. Well, I've had two friends who got divorced 6 months after they got married because literally their wives. I mean, my one friend and I know this is true too. I knew because I knew both of them. He said his wife's personality changed about 3 hours after their wedding ceremony, permanently, and she was psychotic is what it turned, and finally, after 6 months of hell, he called up her psych yeah, he called up her psychiatrist and said, "What am I gonna do here?" And the psychiatrist said, "I have no business telling you this at all, but get the hell out." That's what he said. He said, "Your wife is crazy." That and so he I had another friend of mine who had a very similar experience too. Both of them. I mean, they don't really know each other. It's just like, do you think though what the women say the same thing about men? Yeah, yeah. Oh, oh man, I just had a brain fart because I actually had a response. I can't remember what my response was. What was it? Well, first of all, I've been doing this show in various guises now for about 5 years, and I think maybe in 5 years I've had three female callers tops the entire 5 years. So I mean, I already know who my audience is. So I'd love to get more female callers. I'd love to ask them, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't. So, um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Just like in America, you can legally call yourself a doctor of theology without a degree. It's just a you can just call yourself that. I don't know if you know that. All these reverend doctors, huh? Was that? Yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't need any sort of accreditation or school or anything. You can just call yourself a doctor of theology. Yes, Yeah. Now that's interesting because I don't know if there's a difference between theology and divinity in terms of the legal status of that. I don't know if there is, but yeah, you can call yourself a doctor of theology without any um, credentials whatsoever. And most of these guys who do don't have them. So, but you've given me. Go ahead. You've given me an idea though, and I think I'm actually going to see if I can get a quote unquote relationship expert on the show to talk, and maybe we can get women to call in. I might try that. Of course, right. Yeah, yeah, I think I actually know, there's a woman I had on about a year ago, and I think she wasn't on for that reason, but I think she actually was like, a relationship counselor, so maybe I'll talk to her, I don't know. We'll see. Do you buy my go oh, I'm lo oh, yeah. Yeah, they're a dime a dozen. I'll have no trouble finding any of them. You're right. Hey, did you hear what I was talking about before about do you think the election is gonna be a blowout? I'm starting to think it is. Do you care? Well well, right now on the betting line, Trump is way up. I don't know if you've been following this the last few days, but yeah. Right now, I think the last I saw, Trump was up 23. So, I mean, huge amount. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it reversed. I mean, about 3 weeks ago, she was ahead, but it's reversed since then. Yeah, because because all right, I have a theory about this because I kind of have a theory about everything, I suppose. I don't know. My theory is that I think that maybe the original vaccine was okay, and it was the boosters that were full of crap. And here's the reason I think that. So the vaccine came out like January 21. Trump was just left. You know, February 21, I had the Moderna shots. I had the two of them. It's okay, fine. I'm vaccinated. It's great. La di da da da. So then I'm going to my doctor and I start hearing, well, after about a month after that, in March or April, they're starting, well, now you need a booster shot. And I'm thinking, all right, I'm 65 years old. I've never had to have more than two shots for any vaccine my entire life. Never. I thought, what is this all about? Why do I need a booster shot? Like, what the hell? This is not. So just happened. I had a just happened to see my doctor. It was coincidental. I had a checkup scheduled. I have a heart condition, so I have to go in like every 6 months. And so I'm seeing Laura. Fantastic. I got a fantastic family doctor. And I'm saying, like, Laura, what is this about? Why do I need a booster shot? And she said, well, Jim, she says, we're wondering the same thing. And I thought, okay, if my doctor's saying that, it's all bullshit. That's why and I don't know if you know this, the Cleveland Clinic. Oh, say again, what? Uh, Joe, I think I lost you. Hello? Hey, Joe, could you Yeah, now I can hear you. Yeah, yeah. I did catch the end of what you're saying though, that, yeah, you're right. Doctors are bribed, and so and yeah, no, she's a very, very honest doctor, and yeah, she does not do that shit. So she doesn't do shit just because people pay her to do it. And that's one of the reasons I appreciate her. So, but yeah, so I don't know if you know this. The Cleveland Clinic proved in retrospect that the boosters were completely worthless. A lot of people say they were actually harmful, and I don't know if that's true. I won't go there, but they actually proved definitively that they didn't work. So, what is the point? What's going on? What is the point? It was, as far as I can tell, it was just a money grab. You know, it's like because they got paid by the government for every single vaccine that got administered or booster shot. I'm sure they got paid for the Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, my point is getting back to what you were saying. I've always kind of given I kind of given Trump a pass because I don't know if the actual original vaccines were worthless, but the boosters definitely were. There's no doubt. There's no doubt in retrospect now of that. So that's my personal feeling. I don't know, but yeah, it was what happened was terrible, and he maybe didn't handle it well. I agree with that. You know. All right. Yeah. All right. That makes sense. That's valid. Yeah, so you're saying that, you're not really giving a crap about what he did in the moment because yeah, everyone was kind of panicking. You're saying that afterwards he should have realized that it didn't go well, right? Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you heard this recently, but and I'm not saying this to try to change your mind at all or even justify his actions, but he was asked at a town hall about a week or two ago. Somebody asked him if he had any regrets about uh, what he did as in his time as president. And of course, in the past, like you said, the megalomaniac in him would not have answered that question, but he actually did. He said, "Yeah," he said, and I'm just going to paraphrase this. He said, "Yeah, I trusted some of the wrong people." He said that was his mistake. So I don't know if that's his idea of or way of, you know, obliquely referencing what you're talking about. I don't know if it is, but he did say that. So yeah, right. Hold on, hold on. Y- you phased out there, Joe. Could you repeat that? Red Redfern was his name. Richard Red. I think. No, well, Fauci. You're talking about Fau- You're talking, yeah, Fauci. But just to be precise here, Fauci was the head of the infectious diseases division. A guy named Redfern was actually the head of the CDC. So that was actually Fauci's boss. Even though Fauci got paid more than he did, it was still so that was. But anyway, I just want to point that out for sure. People keeping score at home. Yeah. Yes. He was the highest paid employee of the entire federal government. That's right. He got paid more than the president. When he retired, he was getting paid $438,000 a year. Crazy. He was the head of infectious diseases. He didn't just work there. He was the head of infectious diseases for 37 years. So, and I just think, you got a guy, he's been in he's a bureaucrat. He's not really a scientist. He's a bureaucrat. He's been pushing papers for 37 years. All of a sudden, at 78 years old, they throw him in front of TV, and I'm sure he fucking loved it. Look at there, everyone paying attention to me. Shit. Right. Yeah. Oh, I've lost you again. Joe, you still there? Hello? Oh, we lost Joe. Hopefully he'll call back because he was in the middle of a thought, and that's no way to end. You don't want to end in the middle of a thought. You don't want that. So I was going down my list here before Joe called, and maybe we'll hear back from him. Maybe we won't. So yeah, and please, Joe, if you're listening, still listening, if you're connected, please call back if you can. But if maybe you might not hear us either, so I don't know what's going on. It's the interwebs, everybody. The fact that any of this works is freaking amazing. I started programming on the web in like 1995, and nothing worked worth crap. It was just terrible. And now, we're running. So I don't know if you guys know this. All the major programs that do video podcasting or video live streaming are all browser based. In other words, you don't download anything. They work in real time in web browsers. So I'm using one right this very second, and everyone does. I think that's Joe. I think Joe's back. I think Joe, is that you? That's Yeah, yeah. I can't remember either. But doesn't it bother you? It bothers the crap out of me that this virus come out in Wuhan, China, and down the street from this wet market, like half a mile away, there's the lab that actually does this, and they're saying, "Oh no, it didn't get out of the lab." Oh BS! Come on, it's I mean it's like it's like what's Occam's razor. The simplest conclusion is probably the best. That's right. That's right. Oh, no, it didn't come from there. Just no, no, no. Ignore the guy behind the curtain. Ignore that. I mean, what about your crap? And they were trying to tell us this doesn't work. It's like, and finally John Stewart, a freaking comedian, says, "Well, that doesn't make any sense." And everybody laughs, and yeah. No, it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And now, okay, so I'm the conspiracy theorist too. I think it was deliberate. My personal feeling is that not only did they deliberately come up with this virus, they engineered it. They actually released it, and I don't think they released it to kill people per se. They just wanted to see what was going to happen. The Chinese, oh, let's see what happens to the world if we do this. You know, I mean, they lost a bunch of people too, but I don't know if they have so many. I don't know if they care. you know Exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking too. Matter of fact, I think it was more to test out their obedience than it was to see what was going to happen medically. Yeah, I think you're right. They wanted to see what they could get away with and what would happen. So, and now, I don't know. That's my personal feeling. That's my two bits. You know, yeah, yeah. I'm with you on that. I don't have politicians on the show because they just lie. What's the point? I don't want to talk to anybody who's not telling the truth. I mean, Christ, you know. Yeah, okay. You might expose their stupidity. You might you might ex how? Okay. How do you do it? Alright. See, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what my answer is. Yeah, right. That's a fairly simple thing to do. I mean, it's like, if I like the idea about the newsletter and who is it? Is it Marco Rubio or was it Rand Paul who's done this thing where they every like once a month or once every 6 weeks they put out this list of all the ridiculous stuff that America spends money on. I can't remember who's doing that. I thought, well, that's a service, and the press sometimes covers it, So you got an idea, you got a good idea there. That would work. I got something I got to run by you though. Go ahead. all right, Joe. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Where are you gonna finish? Oh, so but here's my question, or here's my scenario. All right, so you ask somebody to do that, and they go to their colleagues and they do it. What happens if their colleagues come back and say, "No, I'm actually for corruption," and that wouldn't surprise me at this point. I mean, according to the polls done of the staff members of Congress, 90% of the people in Congress are basically in it for the corruption. 90%. That's what their staff members say, and that's a lot of people. So I mean, and then you got Nancy Pelosi, who's basically not even hiding the fact she's doing insider trading, has made like tens of millions of dollars off just knowing what's going to happen in the stock market a few days ahead of time. She doesn't want to stop corruption. And she's probably even tell you that, say no, we're not going to stop corruption. You know what are you going to do? No one's going to vote her out. That's so I don't know. I think you might have a hole there in your theory in the sense that, yeah, I don't know if I think people are brazen. I don't think they actually care if they're being caught being corrupted or not, at this point anyway. Yeah. Yeah. All right. That's as good a plan as I've heard from anybody, other than term limits, but term limits are going to be almost impossible to institute. So, if it ever happens. Have you heard about this thing? You're not you're not for term limits? Yeah, yes, but it's better than the same person doing it for 30 years, isn't it? I don't know, maybe not. Maybe it isn't. Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah, that's true. Jeff Meyer comes on this show regularly. He's my former boss, and he said that you should just vote against the incumbent all the time. Doesn't matter how good a job they've done, just vote against they come in. And at first I thought, well, don't you want to make an exception for people who are really good? He said no, and I started thinking about that. I think maybe he's right. Maybe you don't. Just like vote him out. Hey, I want to run something by you. You're talking about all this government corruption. This was actually on my list of things to talk about tonight. And so I don't know if you heard this. This is one of those things kind of fell through the news too. In the last 3 weeks alone, in the last 3 weeks, not a month, not even a month, in the last 3 weeks, we've added to the national debt $1.4 trillion. Isn't that unfreaking believable? In 3 weeks. Yeah, something like that. Right. Right, but 1.4 trillion dollars. Actually, it's almost 1.5. Well, yeah, in 3 weeks since the beginning of the month. It's like this is nuts. This is absolutely nuts. So, who am I reading here? I gotta find the article on my little rundown list about the fact that They were saying that, I mean, we can't. This is Ward Clark on Red State, and Ward's a pretty cool guy. He's like he lives in Alaska. He's a man's man. He's like he doesn't take any prisoners. But he was like saying um, that at this point, I mean, this is the national debt is probably irretrievable. I mean, at some point, this is all going to collapse. So it turns out hold it. He actually, I gotta find this in the. He said it was it $1,400 for every man, woman, and child in America just in the last 3 weeks. It's like it's crazy stuff, you know, and and yeah, yeah. Well, I'm looking at the thing here. It says. Uh, it's apparently $1,450 of debt for every single person in America. That's what it is. And and of course you probably know this for the first time since World War II. The only other time since World War II, our the national debt is now over 100% of GDP. And also, this happened about a month ago. We're now paying $1 trillion in interest every year, $1 trillion. I mean, it's like I yeah, but I don't know. It's just like, I mean, this is like, this cannot go on. So he makes a suggestion here, and I want to find it. He said, all right, he said we should eliminate every single uh, federal department that isn't authorized by the Constitution. So he goes through EPA, energy, education, AmeriCorps, labor, commerce, and even the IRS, which is not actually delineated in the Constitution. And he said, we just can't do this. We can't run the government like this anymore. I mean, this is crazy crap, you know? And I totally agree. And I don't there's a book written by and I always remember those woman's name because her first name is Lionel, which I just always just assume is a man's name. And I've always wanted to interview her, and I can't remember what the book is called, although I have it bookmarked somewhere. I have it saved. Uh, I've never bought it, but she wrote a book. I think it was in 2012. I think it was about the fact of what would happen in the United States. It's about a fairly affluent, wealthy family in the US and what happens to them after the government defaults on the national debt. And she said basically, well, and even Ward Clark in this article on Red State, even he says the same thing. If that were to happen, it would throw the entire world economy into complete chaos. It would. And so her book is about on a personal level what happens to the people in this family after they lose all their money. But the point is everybody in America has lost all their money. You know, that's actually the point. So it's I mean, is we're talking about frightening stuff. Um and the other interesting thing about the book, she says if you read the book, you would get the impression on an offhand cursory level that conservatism actually caused these problems. And she says, no. And I've heard her in interviews. She said, no, that's not actually true. It's liberals that cause the problem. She said you have to look into the book a little more to actually figure that out. But she said, no, it's a liberal problem, not a conservative problem. But that said, I don't have to tell you, the Republicans have donated to this cause of debt as much as the Democrats have. I mean, it is a yes, it's a bipartisan problem. It is. But I mean, is some is somebody gonna solve this, Joe? Is that gonna happen? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's 9 o'clock. So go to that program and tell them I said hi. Okay. Nice talking to you, man. Always a pleasure. Thanks for calling. See ya. Bye. That's Joe, and I don't actually know where Joe's from. I think he told me once a long time ago, but I can't remember. Anyway, that was a very interesting conversation. Joe's an interesting man, and he's thoughtful. And I have to say, and you can call up too, because I have a lot of people who call the show that are generally way, way more informed and intelligent than I think the rest of the baseline population. So I'm going to finish up here with some UFO news. Joe and I talked about the politics, and we talked about we talked about the women, which is going to get me in trouble. But yeah, he has a good idea. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get an actual relationship, quote unquote, a relationship expert on this show. That's what we should do. I haven't done that. I've been doing this, like I said, for 5 years, in all sorts of different guises. I mean, I did this for about 3.5 years at Kong News. I think I figured I hosted almost 400 radio shows and podcasts for those people, and so I've been doing it on my own now for about a year and a half. And I gotta think. And matter of fact, now that I think about this, let's play. I'm very, very, very happy because Conk is one of the sponsors of the show now. Conk News, and so I left there in relatively good terms. So I'm gonna play the Conk commercial now. That's what I'm gonna do. Here we go. Nope, that's wrong. Hi, all. I want to talk to you about Conk News. You've probably heard me talk about this before, but if you're a news junkie, you should try this out. Conk News is a news aggregator. Now, there are plenty of news aggregators on the web, but Conk News is different than all the rest, and here's how. Most other news aggregators will lump the top stories from each news source under that news source. The top 10 stories, like, for example, from Fox News, Breitbart, the New York Post, etc. What Conk News does is it sends its servers out onto the web to over 75 different news sources every 3 hours. And yes, this is an automated process, but in this case, that's actually a good thing. And collects the latest stories from said 75 sources and then lays them out on its own front page in the order they were posted, regardless of the source. So you see the latest stories at the top of the front page, regardless of where they're from. And this is all free to you. You don't need to log in. You don't need to subscribe, register, nothing. It's completely free. All you have to do is go to conk.com to check it out. That's conk.com, 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 Conk News. It's like production values. All right, it's part two, Jim Peters and I. You can still call in 563-999-3435. Please do. So for part two, we usually talk about like science news, UFO stuff, Bigfoot stuff, not politics. But this is called a segue. So watch this. So I have some UFO news here, but believe it or not, it involves Trump. So this is from the website latestUFOsightings.net, and that's exactly what it is. They post the latest UFO sightings that they collect from all over the web. That's what they do. But they had an article, and this is about 2 weeks ago now, or the article's that old, about the fact about, and it's titled Trump's Mysterious Remarks on UFOs Unveiling His Stance on Aliens. So I don't know if you know this, but Trump has been asked quite a few times about aliens and UFOs. And as it mentions in this article, and I was aware of most of the responses that he's given, but still, they kind of like they plowed them together in this one article. Um, he is he seems to um, display skepticism, but on the other hand, he alludes to knowing additional knowledge, especially when his son Don Jr. interviewed him last year at the start of the campaign And there was a long interview, and the very last thing Don Jr. asked him is that, "Can you tell me about Roswell?" About Roswell, and I'm paraphrasing here, not an exact quote, but this is basically what Trump said. He said, um, "I know stuff I can't tell you, but I'm not certain I believe it." That's what he said, and he's always qualified this with the fact that he's his own personal skepticism. He says people say things, he says we have highly credible pilots that say they see these UFOs, but he said I'm not certain I believe it, and I think it's a cover. That's what I think. I think he's just, now why he won't talk about this and why no president has ever really talked about it is a whole nother. We can talk about that for an hour. There's all sorts of stuff about the fact that it's national security, and that, well, first of all, we know the UFOs are real. Now the military, the U.S. government's admitted it, but they don't know. They say they don't know where they're from. They're from, and they don't know how they can fly that way. But if you're going to, oh, let me see, how do I put this? If you're going to if you're going to buy that, then the idea is, well, um, where oh God. Seriously, just take me behind the shed and shoot me. What the hell? What am I talking about? All right, I'll tell you what I'm talking about. About the fact, so the UFOs are real, but they don't, the government or the military anyway does not want to acknowledge the fact they don't know where they're from. So that means the military doesn't know anything, and they don't want to acknowledge to the public they don't know anything. Now the opposite of that is, the converse of that is that they actually do know a whole bunch more than they're willing to say, and they don't want to release that for different reasons. One is they're afraid the public will panic. Two is they're afraid, and I'm not kidding about this, they're afraid society will collapse. There's a lot of people who think that if we acknowledge the fact that extraterrestrials are real, that society, or at least the economy, might collapse. There's that too. There's also the thing about the fact that the government has been in contact with the aliens, and they absolutely don't want to admit this. And then on the far spectrum of this, on the far, far end, where we get to all the weird conspiracy stuff, there's the theory that the extraterrestrials have told the government, "Don't you dare tell the public about this, or else." There's that too. So who knows? But something's going on, I mean, like I said, we know now the UFOs are real. We don't know who's piloting them, where they're from. We don't know that. They're certainly not from Russia or China. Although some of these things, there have been drones that have been misidentified of UFOs, or that are probably from China. That's probably true, but they're not real UFOs. So, and you can tell a real UFO because its flying seems to violate the laws of physics. That's the general rule here. Now, I knew I have a friend of mine who's a reporter who writes on UFOs, and he's told me I don't know if you follow this show. There's a show on the History Channel. I think it's the highest rated show on the History Channel, called the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. And I just want to point out something that's very subtle, but I think it's kind of important here. The show's title is not The Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch. It's The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. That's the title. And the guy who owns this ranch now, his name Brandon Fuselog, or something like that. Anyway, so my friend writes on UFOs. He's a very, actually, quite a well, I'm not going to name him, quite a well-known writer on this topic, and he writes on UFOs. And he said he received an Mr. Fusegod, whatever his name is, Fuselog, invited him to come out to Skinwalker Ranch, and believe it or not, he declined. And I asked him, "Did you decline for the reason I think you declined?" And he said, "Yeah. If the reason you think I declined is because this stuff comes home with you, yes." So he said he's been writing about this stuff for a few years. He went from he's about 70 years old. He went from going about never seen a UFO ever, till about 2 years ago, he saw six in 1 year. And he said that, just like a lot of other people talk about this, if you read Louis Alexandro's book, Imminent, the guy who ran the the ATIP program, he said that this stuff started. He was getting weird crap in his house, that there were orbs flying around his house. They were going through the walls. He said his family saw it, and it scared the crap out of him. And now my friend has said the same thing. He said that he saw 6 UFOs in 1 year, and all of a sudden there's weird crap going on in his house too. Now, this show, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, I know a lot of people think that this is fake or about they're exaggerating, but they aren't. I know people who worked on the show, and they no, apparently this is entirely real. That there's something going on there at this ranch, and I'll tell you, I have a theory. Everyone's have a theory, and I'm not, this show's about speculation, not about facts. So my theory is that there's a alien base there. And the reason I bring this up is because there's another article that was that came out of the news, and this is really amazing. I really want to see if I can get this guy on the show. I've got quite a few. I've talked to quite a few high-profile UFO people. Daniel Sheehan, he's an attorney. He's the attorney for Louis Alessandro, and he represents him regarding this book he put out. And he's also, if that name rings a bell to you, he was the guy who handled the Pentagon Papers in 1974, 72 when that came out. It was a huge thing. It was the biggest single leak in the federal government at that time. And so he's basically been well known ever since. Well, the thing is, he is now represents people in the UFO field. He also represents David Grush. I know that too. That's not written here. I know that off the top of my head. But he has said, now this is Daniel Sheehan, the attorney talking. He says that he knows for a fact, because of his dealings with the government, that there's at least two alien bases already on Earth established. And so this is crazy. If you look at this, this is like crazy stuff, but this is a highly, highly credible person. Now, maybe he's saying this, I suppose, to get attention because, at this point, anybody who says anything the least bit crazy, it ends up in the news. It does. But you'd think he doesn't have to do that. I mean, I'm sure he's quite affluent. He's been working as a lawyer since the Pentagon papers thing 50 years ago. He's been working ever since, and he's been hailing, and he says he knows for a fact this is true. There's at least two alien bases on Earth. So the reason I bring that up is because, getting back to the thing about like Trump, uh, talking about Trump was talking about specifically the Roswell incident, and I was talking about my friend. And the Skinwalker Ranch thing. So I think that what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch is there's a huge mesa at the back of that ranch. And a mesa is basically a hill that doesn't go down on the other side where the land kind of permanently rises up. And I think that there's an alien base there because it's very simple. It's a perfect place to put one because you have two ways to get in: the front of the side or the top and the side. You know, it'd be wonderful. That's the type of, if you were looking for a place to put a base on Earth, that's the type of place you choose. Now, that place is in uh oh God, what's the name of the town? It starts with a D. I can't believe I forgot it. Uh, it's in New Mexico, and there's been rumors for years that people in the small town have seen weird creatures and stuff like that. It's like, so my friend did not go to the ranch because he didn't want this stuff following him home. Because, believe it or not, every single scientist who's gone to that ranch says this has happened. All of them. They say you basically can't avoid it. That if you go to the ranch and spend time there, this stuff will follow you home. And especially like what Louis Alessandro was saying. So you get weird orbs in your house, and they're going through walls, and they're following people around. And it's pretty obvious that these orbs are probes, remote controlled, basically, their version of a drone, basically. And and so, it's like, so my point is, as far as like Trump denying the fact that these things exist, there's also, we don't know the reason for the denial. But I think I think he's playing dumb. I think he actually knows, and I think he buys it. That's my personal feeling. I don't know. I don't, it's like, but yeah, so Daniel Sheehan says that there's two alien bases on Earth. He said one of them is off the coast of Baja California, which that one has been long rumored. It's actually off the coast of it's off right off of Catalina Island in Los Angeles. And then he says another one. is probably in the Antarctic, and that one's been long rumored too. There's a there's Port, what is it called? Port, is it called Port Monroe or Port Murrow? Is the actual city? There's only one real outpost or town on the entire continent of Antarctica. It's run by the United States government. It's called, is it either Point Murrow or Point Monroe? I can't remember what it's called. Any rate, that's the only airport too. So, but there are other little settlements where scientists set up. So I heard this story, and this is public knowledge. I can't remember where I read this or where I heard it. Supposedly, there's someone was having a medical emergency, and they had to fly out of port, this town I'm talking about, into and go into the interior of Antarctica to pick somebody up, and they were actually going to land on the ice. So they're flying this plane. It's a dangerous mission. Now there has been permanently there's a spot, excuse me, toward the center of Antarctica, sorry, toward the near the South Pole, where it's restricted. You can't fly over it. But because they were in such a hurry here, and it was a life or death situation, the pilots got an exception to fly over the spot. But believe it or not, they were told when they flew over not to look down. I know that's weird, but that's what they were told. They said, "Okay, we're going to let you do this because there's a time factor here, but don't look down when you do it." And of course, they did. And supposedly, what they saw is a giant hole in the ice, and also some sort of like metallic or objects that were in the hole. And it's been long rumored that that's an alien base. So I don't know what to tell you. You know, it's like that's a rumor. You know. Then I got another story here. This is from 1935. Believe it or not. Well, this happened, but this woman, these two women, they're elderly sisters. They say their father, who was a minister, came to the United States, came to Washington, D.C. in 1935 for a conference, and that this guy knew Cordell Hull, who was a retired Secretary of State for the United States. And he invited him to come to the Capitol building, and he said, "I want to show you something." And then went down into the sub basement of the Capitol, which apparently is a real place. The Capitol is a sub basement. Apparently now it's used for security purposes. But back then, he took him down there, and he said this guy told his daughters that he saw six or eight, he couldn't remember, about a half a dozen extraterrestrials in tubes filled with liquid, and the the remnants of a crashed small spacecraft that was being stored down there. That's what he told his daughters, and he did in 1935. And Corbell Hall, the guy who took him down there, told him you can't tell anyone about this. So there's that. And then this is not UFO stuff. This is science stuff, but it's really, really important. I think I talked about this at the beginning of the broadcast too. There's been a huge, huge deposit of lithium that's been found of all places in Arkansas, southwestern Arkansas, the southwest corner. Now, lithium is what's used for batteries, for all sorts of stuff, and specifically for electric cars. And that's one of the reasons electric cars cost so much money is because right now China can either they're either from China or China controls almost all the lithium on the planet right now. And so because of that, we have to buy it from them, and they basically charge what they want because they have basically have a monopoly. And so because of that, that's the reason electric cars aren't cheap. Supposedly, this deposit is like between 9 and 15 million tons, which would which translates into in 2030, it would be 9 times the amount of all the lithium that would be used on the planet in 1 year. And so there's a good possibility. Now they don't know how much of this is recoverable or mineable. They do know that lithium's there. They confirm that. They know like that figure I just gave you 9 to 15 million tons. They know that, but that doesn't mean they can get to all of it. That doesn't mean that. But they think this is that's the part they got to figure out. How much of this stuff can they actually pull out of the ground? But this is going to be a huge game changer for U.S. commerce and U.S. industry. Even if they only can take out a little bit, frankly, it's so much of it that it would put a crimp in the worldwide market. for the Chinese anyway. It'd be a great thing for us. So yeah, I mean, things go on. So we're done for this evening. I appreciate you guys listening, along watching or whatever you're doing. We changed the camera angle here, and I think I look a little better. I think that's impossible at this point. But and what you can't see behind my head, if you're watching this on Rumble, what you can't see is my giant stash of prescription pills. This is my office. I'm gonna do this in my office now. We did actually do it from a studio previously. We did, but when we decided we had to that we had to go to mostly audio, it was not worth the trouble to rent that anymore. So anyway, so I want to point out again, we're off tomorrow night, Thursday night. Jackie Dorothy from, from Cowboy State Daily. She writes the feature series there called Haunted Wyoming, and we're really looking forward to talking to her. So we're talking about all no, like I said at the top of the show, Wyoming is the least populated state in the union, and it's not small. And because of that, it has more than its share of real ghost towns. And apparently, a lot of this stuff is talking about people. From what I've read, she's said there are ghost towns in Wyoming where yet do literally see ghosts, and a lot of people do, and they become tourist attractions, and that hasn't stopped the ghosts. The ghosts are still coming out. So anyway, I'm looking forward to talking to her. So I want to thank you folks for watching very much. Really, we have a good time here, and I hope everything's well with you. So you can the well before we go here, let me just explain very briefly that the way this works is that the general format of the show is in the first 40 minutes we have an interview with somebody, and then the second half of the show I talk about crazy stuff, and you get to call in. And so I hope you keep calling in. I really appreciate that. So good night, Uncle Donnie. Good night, Esperanza, and good night to you wherever you are. I'll see you on Thursday night, not tomorrow night, Thursday night. You take care, everybody.